Hey guys, welcome back. So in our last video, we went over a lot of different properties of gasoline, different mixes of ethanol, pure ethanol, and methanol. So in E85, of course. So we went over this. If y'all haven't seen that video, please go back because none of this is really going to make sense if you haven't seen the last video. I think it's one of the best videos I've ever made as far as actually having useful information for race cars that you guys have probably never seen before, especially broken down like this. So, with that all said, today's video, we've done the math, we've done the numbers. We are going to go methanol on the race car. The math says that it's a good move. Now, there are some downsides to running methanol, and I'm not going to pretend to be like an expert at all of this because I've never run methanol. I understand a little bit about it. I understand how to do math, but I've never used the stuff. I used to have water injection, didn't run it then. I just ran pure water. But if you go look at race cars, go look at fast stuff. People that are running 50, 60, 70, 80 pounds of boost, they're almost all running methanol. There are a few holdouts running E85, but it's just not that common. A lot of guys are running meth, and there's a reason for it. And we just went over this on the last video, why you would run methanol over E85. So that's kind of the thing. So here's our thinking. The performance gains are going to be worth it. So we talked about the intercooler, right? Having an intercooler, you can drop 126 kilojoules per kilogram, right? But having methanol, you can drop 800. And then as you go richer, those numbers get big really fast. Look at that, 1100, damn near 1300. So, I mean, this is a 10x improvement over having an intercooler. So, hilarious. You don't really need an intercooler at low boost, and at high boost is where you're going to be running these high lambdas, which is when you're going to get all that cooling, right? You can't get this much cooling when you're running 5 pounds of boost. You don't get temperatures like that and temperature drops like that at low boost. You got to be running man boost. So at man boost levels, we're getting this crazy cooling. So the intercooler is kind of obsolete. And that's really what we needed to know was that, is this worth keeping or not? And the math says no, it really isn't. Maybe if you really maybe this does something for power. Okay, I guess I should make that distinction. I would assume, and I could be wrong, but I would assume you could make more power having an intercooler because you could get a denser charge. So essentially, for the same mass flow, you got to think about mass flow, not just boost pressure. If you're trying to run a certain amount of mass flow through the engine, an intercooler potentially, if you had a really good intercooler, could help. The problem you run into with intercoolers is they have pressure drops. So say you have an intercooler that can do this. You can go from 350F to 120F. Well, that's great. That colder air temperature means you can run less boost, which is, awesome for turbo efficiency, lowers your pressure ratios, very desirable. But if your intercooler has a big pressure drop, then your turbo has to work harder to create that boost to push it through. So it can end up canceling out. And that's really what you want to avoid, right? You don't want that, you don't want to do all this work for nothing. So, but it wouldn't be for nothing if you could not run at this temperature. If you just could not run, on gasoline, you can't do that. You're just going to make no power because you could run no timing. So this is more like a necessary evil, in my view, because it's probably not desirable to run an intercooler if you don't need it. So that's kind of where we're going with this. I don't think we're going to need it if we run methanol. Now, let's go over, I think we've covered this stuff. Let's talk about the pros and cons of running this. We talked about the no intercooler, so that's going to save a bunch of weight and piping, and I don't have to build a structure to support the intercooler, so badass, that literally takes workload off. Makes room for all kinds of cool stuff down the road too by not having that thing take up. That was the biggest thing in the front of the car. So boom, weight reduction, simplicity, reliability, all check marks. Let's see. Let's go into some of the downsides. I don't see the temperature being a downside, so I'm not going to worry about that. Some of the big downsides. Fuel system. We've got to build a fuel system that can handle this. Let me show you something real quick. Okay. Say hello to my little friend, ID 2600s. So we have some big injectors, and that will help us. We'll probably still run out of fuel at some point, especially since we're going to run methanol. But our entire fuel system has to be rated for methanol now. The good news is, I still got to build the entire fuel system, so probably not a big deal. but we do have to be careful of that. There are some safety concerns with methanol. So if you get it in your eyes, you're basically going to go blind. If you drink it, if you drink more than like a few tablespoons, it'll kill you. It's kind of a downside. Also, if it ever catches on fire, it burns clear, so you can't tell it's actually on fire. You can see the heat sometimes, but you don't see the flames. So it's very dangerous. If y'all have ever seen a race car driver that looked like he's dancing around on fire, but you couldn't tell he's on fire, that was methanol. So basically, we got to step up our safety game if we run methanol, which we will do. We are not about to have a problem with this. Okay, so it's very, very corrosive. Methanol is very corrosive. Ethanol, alcohols are already corrosive. Methanol is even worse. So we're going to have to, we actually don't know all the stuff we need to do yet to make that work. But lots of race cars run methanol. So I know it can be done. And from some quick Google searching, I was reading up on like Yellow Bullet and some other forums. It looks like whoever it is, somebody, VP Racing or VP Race Fuels, I just don't remember their name. Somebody sells methanol for racing that has additives in it that are supposed to help with like lubricating fuel pumps, lubricating injectors, preventing corrosion, or at least minimizing it. And from reading some of the people that run this stuff, it apparently works. I saw people that were running, say, several years. Like I saw one guy said he ran 5 years with an aluminum fuel tank that wasn't anodized, running methanol, and he said he took it apart and had no corrosion. It sounds kind of crazy, but supposedly that fuel, the specific blend, had some additives that helped with corrosion. So we'll look into that. We may have to run that. Another thing is like fuel hoses, fuel rails, fittings, all that kind of stuff. We're going to have to go through all that stuff, make sure it's all safe. So we got to do that. Our fuel pump, I have a brand new fuel pump from a Veyron that I was going to put in the car. I don't know if I'm going to be able to run that pump now because I don't know if it's going to handle methanol. I got to look into it. Maybe it will, but we just don't know at this point. So yeah, just basically a bunch of different stuff we got to check out. And then the other issue, or it's a benefit, it's a problem, however you want to look at it, right? Remember how we said you can run way more fuel with methanol? Like you can literally just dissolve a lot more fuel in here, like on a percent basis. So anyway, that's a good thing, but that means we got to have more fuel flow. I didn't do the fuel numbers like that. Anyway, I guess we did that. Maybe that's a good. But essentially, with methanol, we're going to be spraying a lot more of it. So bigger injectors, bigger fuel pumps, stuff like that. Luckily, we were already like overdoing our fuel system, the stuff we have purchased. So we're probably mostly okay, but basically, we got to make sure that's up to, it's going to be adequate. I guess another obvious one is that we're not going to be able to buy this fuel at like a normal gas station, right? I'm not even sure if my racetrack sells methanol. I just assume they do, but somebody asked me today, and I was like, I don't really know. So I got to find out. Hopefully they do. I know they sell race fuels. I just don't know if they have methanol. So I hope they do. Got to look into that. If they don't, I'll have to buy it somewhere, which not the end of the world. There's also advantages to having fuel because, you don't have to go to the store every time. You can just have it yourself, like in a barrel or something. So anyway, I guess that's enough rambling for now. Like I said, there's going to be pros, there's going to be cons. Overall, this is going to be a big win for the build. Now, it's probably obvious, but the big benefit to doing this is having headroom. You don't have to run methanol to run 40 pounds of boost, but I mean, eventually we're going to start off running like 40, 45 pounds, but eventually we're going to quit running bitch boost. We're going to turn this shit up and make some real power. And that's the problem is BPs are not the best motor for like anti-knock. They're like terrible. So my guess is that you start trying to run 50 pounds of boost, 55, anything like that, especially if you're making good power, you're just going to run into the limit of your fuel. And that's the one thing where methanol is going to help us is basically you do this. You set this shit up fat as fuck. So the great thing about methanol, like y'all might have been looking at this and going, why in the world would you run that rich? The answer is because you can. So with ethanol, you can't do that. With ethanol, you get too rich, it gets lazy, it just doesn't make power, it doesn't run right. Apparently with methanol, like, let me try to draw this. That's going to be hard to draw. So if this was a graph, and you were drawing like a graph for this is like air-fuel ratio versus power, kind of. There's a point where, hey, here you make your peak power. If you go richer, power drops off. You go leaner, power drops off. This is like, say, E85. Methanol, more like this. I'm not actually sure of the exact shape, but basically it doesn't do, like it eventually does fall off somewhere. But there's like apparently this area where you can go really fat and just keep getting fatter and fatter, and it doesn't really fall off like you would think it would. I don't know why that is, but a lot of people that run methanol have said that that's true, is that it's very forgiving. You can run them very rich. And basically, you might be looking at this graph going, well, why in the world would you run a car here when you could run it here? Well, the answer is, you run it here, it explodes. You run it here, it makes the most power. You run it way over here, now, or say you run it here, right? Well, now your air fuel can be anywhere in this region, and you don't break anything. Your shit's reliable. And you're not really paying a big penalty in performance. A little bit, but not a lot. And then, guess what happens when you have a window like this? You can just run a shit ton of boost and not worry about it. And that's the reason I want to run methanol. This is getting down, sorry it took 11 minutes in the video to make this point, but that's the real reason, is to have forgiveness, to have a system where I can just beat on it and get it close and not worry about perfection and not worry about, oh, if something's a little bit this or a little bit that it's going to explode. We don't need that. That's the beauty of methanol. So I'm sure I'll have some more stuff coming up for you guys, but I wanted to explain this. Like I said, this was more of a normal video. The last one was more of engineering, but I wanted to show you guys what went into making this decision, because this is a big thing for me, and this is setting us up for future success. We don't have to have methanol right now, but this is going to help us with our long-term goals of power and reliability, and that's why we're doing it. Anyway, until next time, y'all take it easy.